and then define our adjustment percentage amount here from 0 to 100%. Of course, you wouldn't enter in 100% for a stop loss amount. I'm just saying that's what can be entered in that field. Next come our inpatient rates. These are our unique per diem rates that we can enter in for our inpatient accounts. The description field, free text field, so most likely your facility has entered in the particular description for per diem rates if you're using rates. Okay, so user entered in our description here, and then it's a lookup into the method field, and there are 4 options: charge category, charge procedure code, ICD procedure from the code screen and process account, or DRG code from the code screen and process account. Now, based on the posting of that particular code, based on the method here for charge category, procedure, ICD procedure, or DRG code, we define our per diem amount here. So for charge category, per diem amount based on the presence of, for that rate, charge category 110. So, private room and board charge, look up into the charge category dictionary, private room and board charge category. Now, based on the method here, I could enter in a range of charge categories or individual charge categories here, as we see here, or a different number of charge categories to determine our per diem rate. And again, we can enter in it for charge procedures, ICD procedures, or DRG code. Now, based on this inpatient rate, just note when the rule is calculating reimbursement, it goes by the data service for the inpatient account, and it checks that inpatient rate for that data service. If it hits, it goes in order from 1 through how many rates that you have defined here. Once it locates that particular per diem rate, that is the rate for that particular service date. Okay, and we'll look at that when we get into looking at our example accounts. Next is the inpatient extras tab, which is our extras or our outliers or carve-outs to determine if we're going to add on to a per diem rate based on particular codes posted to our accounts, or substituting for per diem rate here. Description field is a free text field, of course. We have our methods, charge category, procedure code, charge procedure code, ICD procedure, DRG code, or CPT code. Now we have our fields here, amounts or percentage. If we're using charge category, we have access for charge procedure. We have access to the percentage field. Or if we're calculating a particular rate here for our amounts, outside of what we have for the charge category pricing, we have our rate event. So if we're using percentage, we may say certain percentage of the charge category amount, or for our per diem amounts, we may say per case for a one-time posting, cost, or per day. Okay. We also have for our extras page whether or not we're going to limit reimbursement of these particular rates by a particular dollar amount or number of days. So we could say for 10,000 or 10. And based on what that value is, we enter in our method, either 10 days or let's say $10,000 as a total. And our add to per diem field, okay, this is yes or no field, and we have access to it if we have our rate event defined as per day. Okay, now we see here with the charge category amount, add to per diem, that means it's going to utilize for a data service the inpatient rates. So if we had add to per diem for this rate, it's going to add on to that per diem amount for this particular rate. We say per day and say add to per diem no. For that particular data service, if one of the inpatient rates posted for that day, or the extra is, or this extra is actually posted, it's going to use this rate as the per diem rather than what's on the inpatient rate page. And for the respective codes that we define here, we enter them here for our codes from a range of codes, an individual code, or a number of codes on each particular from and through line. Our next tab for inpatients, since we're dealing with inpatients, of course, are maternity patients. Now, using for our inpatient rates, based on what we had as the reimbursement criteria in the customer-defined parameters for maternity patients, either the charge category, procedure, ICD procedure, diagnosis code, or DRG code, to help as part of the criteria to determine a maternity patient. We have our per diem rates here for normal delivery, a 1, 2, or 3-day stay, or a 5-day stay for our C-section delivery maternity patients. And of course, this is set up for 3 and 5 for each type of delivery. But we can add for additional days that the patient may be staying in the hospital down below. The mother-baby billing field is a yes or no field. When it's defined as yes, that means the newborn patient will be using the rates defined here based on the mother's account and the rates defined here. If we say no, then most likely for a particular reimbursement rule, there's one out there that's used specifically for newborn accounts, most likely, and they would most likely have their own inpatient rates defined. And the border baby rate, if we have it defined here, mother-baby billing, yes. If the baby is going to stay in the hospital longer than the mother, we have to define a per diem rate, those extra days of stay for our newborn. Of course, complications may arise. More treatment may be needed for the newborn, so that would be the extra days of stay or the per diem rates for our baby. Okay, next, we're going to our outpatient rate tab. If we're using rates to calculate reimbursement for outpatient accounts, we go to the outpatient rate tab. All right, a little different from the inpatient rates, okay? Since we can define both the default percentage rate and the daily rate or the outpatient rates, the individual outpatient rates below. Most likely because since outpatient accounts are dealing with 1 day of stay, we may not hit one of those particular per diem rates. So we can calculate a default percentage rate. Description field, free text field, of course, again. Then we have our method as account type, charge category, ICD procedure, CPT code, charge procedure code, or all code. And that's the all code that resides for charges in the charge procedure dictionary based on the customer defined parameters, and remember the priority that we defined on the receipts and adjustment tab. And based on our method defined here, we can define either an amount or a percentage. Most likely for charge categories, we're using percentage. Okay? Based on our rates, our percentage, we define our quantity either on a per day basis, since most likely patients are staying only 1 day, per case, per quantity, cost of the procedure that comes from actually materials management for the procedure, and actually I think it's, you may see it in the charge procedure dictionary, total charges, or we go by, if we have charge category or percentage, we go by charge category total, charge category professional amount, which means for the procedures associated to a charge category, if they have professional components or percentages, we use that, or technical components, which would be the total minus the professional. And we also have reimbursement schedule. And if we chose reimbursement schedule, we would define here for the reimbursement schedule that we define here for that particular rate. And we can also define for the limit of reimbursements, we can define it here as a dollar amount. And then for each particular method, we enter in our range, thank you, of code or codes based on the method defined here. Now, in addition, a separate difference between inpatients and outpatients is that if multiple rates or codes are noted on our outpatient account, it actually adds up those present codes to calculate reimbursement for our outpatient accounts. Next, we're going to our ambulatory and surgical page. This is dealing with ambulatory or surgical patients, most likely patients with the status of SDC for surgical daycare, and dealing with reimbursement if we're dealing with CPT codes on the CPT code dictionary. Now, in the CPT code dictionary, there is a field noted as group, and you can actually enter in a number value there, most likely for the CPT code group. If your codes have group numbers, the reimbursement amount can be calculated here for outpatients based from group 1 through 9. Okay, and that will be the reimbursement rate for that CPT code. And if you have a group 0, you can find it here as well. Now, in addition to the grouping rates, if particular codes, CPT codes from one group have different reimbursement calculations or should be associated to a different group without making edits to the dictionary itself, you can define them here in the exception page section, where for a particular CPT code or range of CPT codes may have its own unique reimbursement rate. Or if the rates are associated to a different group, you can use the reimbursement rate of another group to calculate reimbursement. Next, with our multiple procedure percentages section, if CPT codes on the accounts, we have more than one group associated to those CPT codes. If we do utilize groups, we can determine the actual rate of percentage, the percentage of reimbursement for the first CPT procedure code, second, and third. And it'll always go by the highest value or highest reimbursement rate to determine what's the first procedure, the second procedure, and third procedure. If codes don't have a group, we could have defined a group 0, yes, or if we say no, we can say whether or not we're going to use a percentage of the total charges as the default percentage rate on our patient account, or simply define to use the outpatient rate page for our accounts for reimbursement. Next is our ER and observation rate page to calculate reimbursement for ER and OBS patients, okay? Either or option for per case rates or overall default percentage rates for emergency patients and observation patients from, let's say, from 0 to 100% reimbursement. And we can have a limit at the total amount to reimburse for ER and observation patients as a default percentage. If we don't have a default percentage, we simply define our per case rates here. And going by the reimbursement criteria that we defined in the customer-defined parameters, determine what's an ER level 1, 2, and 3 rate, we define it here as our reimbursement rate. And any account that doesn't hit one of those levels, 1, 2, or 3, we can determine the non-emergency rate for our ER patients. And next, for our observation patients, determining our reimbursement amount, we're going by per day, per hour, if we're doing regular time differential, or by an amount for the presence of those charge categories or charge procedures posted. That would be our rates defined here. Next, we're going to the Medicare PPS rate page, okay? You can only access this again if we have rates or rates plus hook as our method, and determining whether or not for the respective DRG, APC codes, IRF, RUG codes, or home health resource group codes, based on the account type that we had defined on the general tab, and one of those PPS rates, determine calculation, okay? So we're defined here, yes, or we can leave them blank or define no. DRG codes have a little bit extra. We have federal only, which means we're going to use the rates defined in the DRG code dictionaries to determine the DRG reimbursement rate. We could say no here, or if we say federal with outliers means that we're going to enter in the respective DRG variables here, or the amounts, to determine the DRG reimbursement rate. Now you may define this because, with your reimbursement rate for DRG codes, they may change on an annual basis based on your insurance provider, which may be separate from what you have defined in the DRG code dictionaries. And you can define them directly here in the reimbursement management dictionary. But if we say federal only, it's going to use simply those rates. Next is the checks and non-primary page, okay? We're going to find here proration checks. So look up into the claim check dictionary for each check defined as a proration hold. Okay, and so look up here for all those checks defined as claim checks, proration holds, noting the mnemonic, the name, and whether or not it's associated to a claim check group. I believe the standard groups out there are ADM, BAR, and ABS. Okay, now, once we cut a bill, and the bill is in preliminary status, using this particular rule, the rule is going to use these checks to determine whether or not the accounts have the necessary information to pass this rule. For example, AD, admit date. Account's got to have an admit date in order to pass. If it doesn't, it fails. Or birth date, or discharge date, or an AB status of final, or subscriber information for the primary insurance. And now, if they fail those checks, they fall on the unposted bills list for preliminary bills status, bills in preliminary status, and appear on the biller's work list to work. We'll get to that when we get into biller support. In addition, we can define the evaluation of these proration holds based on particular account types if we needed to. Most likely this rule does inpatient and outpatients together. Outpatient accounts may not have discharge dates or admit dates. So we could restrict the evaluation of a discharge date to most likely the account types that are defined as inpatient account types. And those checks are also viewable on the Step Magic Code screen. So anything you enter here for checks appear on Step Magic Code there. Next, for prorating the deductible, coinsurance, and copay amounts that are defined on the insurance data screen in process account, whether or not to prorate that deductible, coinsurance, or copay amount to the secondary insurance, prorate to self-pay, or enter in none or blank to say that you're not prorating those amounts to any particular insurance bucket. In addition, those charges that are deemed non-medically necessary, we can say blank, leave this field blank, or keep it as none, which we're not going to do anything with those charges. Or we can determine whether or not to use the primary adjustment procedure to adjust off those charges that are deemed non-medically necessary. Use the primary 2 adjustment procedure to adjust those off, or take those non-medically necessary charges and prorate the charge amounts to the secondary insurance, or put them to self-pay. In addition, we can say for specific charge categories or charge procedures, we can have the rule prorate those amounts for those range of charge categories or procedures to the secondary insurances or to self-pay automatically using the checks and non-primary tab. And next, the Step Magic Code tab, using Step Magic Code data and Step Magic Code. We only have access to this particular section if our method defined as Step Magic or Rates plus Hook. Okay, our proration checks that we find here, of course, that we saw on the checks and non-primary tab, any restrictions, any exceptions, okay, and these exceptions for individual procedures, we can assign temporary charge categories, okay. Let's say for this particular procedure, it's associated to one particular charge category, okay? And rather than having its charge amount associated with that charge category total, we can assign it its own temporary charge category. This is a free text field. It could be ABC, 123, or in this case, simply temp, where we can use that temporary charge category and plug it into Step Magic Code to output that particular amount, however we see fit. Our next section is our diagnosis procedure, ICD procedure, and surgical CPT rates, field rates. So a particular diagnosis code, ICD procedure, or surgical CPT code, we can enter in here for from or through. We can enter an individual rate, a code, or a range of codes to determine a diagnosis reimbursement rate, an ICD procedure rate, or surgical CPT rate. And using those diagnosis, procedure, and CPT rates, we can use those and plug them into Step Magic Code using the respective reimbursement variables to calculate those rates. And next we go to the Step Magic Code tab, and this is just simply using bits of code to determine the utilized variables to calculate reimbursement. Okay, and we see here with the tote to INS1. When we enter in a particular line for our Step Magic Code, and this is very beneficial, highly recommended. Once we enter it in, we pop into the description field. This allows you as the user or for your healthcare facility to provide simply a layman's description of what exactly that line does. This is ideal if you're just learning reimbursement management, or you know reimbursement management, but you have no idea what someone did to enter this in, a particular line in. It's very helpful. So if I say tote to INS1, it says the total goes to the primary insurance. Okay, rate tote goes to T1. Rate tote is a variable you should only use, or you can only use, if you have rates plus hook as your method. Why I say that is if you use rates plus hook, you need to instruct the Step Magic Code to use the totals of the rate pages to plug them into Step Magic Code, which is why rates plus hook will give you the total reimbursement. If you have rates plus hook and you don't use rate tote, Step Magic Code is not going to take that into account. Okay, next is INS1 minus T1 for our temporary variable goes to 80J1, which notes, as we see here, primary insurance minus the rate totals equals the primary insurance adjustment taken up front. Okay, that's a very basic rule. Okay, most likely for some of you and your healthcare facilities, you may have tote goes to INS1, for 100% charges go to the primary insurance, or you may just off only a certain percentage. Step Magic Code, if you utilize it, can be as simple or as detailed as you need to for your reimbursement calculations. And next is what we note as calculating a proration flag. Proration flag is simply just a text to flag accounts within the Step Magic Code. Doesn't actually affect calculation or reimbursement, but it can be used to locate accounts upfront prior to them being billed to appear on your concurrent review report. Noting if the total charges exceeds $2,000 in this case, then a proration flag should be posted for any account that hits total charges exceeding $2,000. And I'll show you that in just a moment. Okay, that is basically the Reimbursement Management Dictionary in a nutshell. There are a few other routines that we can take a look at right now. Okay, let's see. We can list out our reimbursement management to give you the full listing of all your rules. We can use the view just to simply view the Reimbursement Management Rules Dictionary. What I want to take a look at right here are the copy and copy to ring routines. The copy routine allows you to copy the effective date and method from one rule to another. Like I said before, don't need to reinvent the wheel, so you don't have to plug in every single rate, page amount, per diem amounts, or step magic code if you have an existing rule that is kind of used as a basis for a new rule, and you may need to do some more edits to it, but you're not really going to kill yourself and possibly make any errors on your case, because for live rules and making errors for reimbursement could really mess up a number of your accounts with live rules. So if I wanted to say for, let's say, rule BC, okay, and the existing effective dates that we have out there, let's say for 117, let's say, well, my Blue Cross inpatient outpatient rule may be a little bit different, but we're going to say for a new effective date, it's going to utilize the effective date and the method and all the variables, all the values that we defined here. We're going to plug it into this rule with a new effective date. So it's an easy way to set up new rules or new effective dates for rules with methods without needing to break your back and just do a lot of typing. In addition, what I've seen with a lot of sites, well, in some cases, the copy to ring routine. This will actually allow you to copy a rule and its effective date to a different ring. So for example, if you're a multi-facility or a multi-bar application site, you have multiple bar applications. Or for example, one of the possibilities of creating rules is testing them in test prior to putting them in live, rather than simply retyping or entering the rate pages and the step magic code. You could copy that effective date from test to live. And I stress this, only do that if you're 100% tested out with that particular rule. So I can say from that particular universe, the particular HCIS database, to the particular bar application. Okay, look at the Canadian site, we did have it set up. We can enter in our reimbursement management rule and our effective date to copy from what we have here in our source ring or our source bar application to another bar application in another HCIS and possibly another universe. That way, again, not killing ourselves trying to create rules, and we're not going to, hopefully eliminate any possible errors that could be made. Slip of the keystroke always can happen. Next routine is our contract modeling dictionary. Basically, it's the same thing that you see in the reimbursement management rule dictionary. Difference is it's a model of a contract. It's not an active rule here. Okay. Aside from possibly creating rules in test and then copying them over to live, you could also, for a particular rule and a new effective date and method, you could create that model here. Okay, as you see here, all the same detail that we see in the existing reimbursement rule. We go through the rates, rate pages, outpatient rates, step magic code, all could be the same or it could be different. Difference is effective date is actually today. Oh, actually, it's a week ago from today. Okay. With Rule BC, I don't think January 18th is set up yet. And then we have rates plus hook. Okay. And this, we can use this, test out this model in live against live accounts without affecting the processing of bills. Okay, we can test this out and make sure that a rule could be utilized for new or future dates. And I can file this and make any edits and do testing, further testing. And once my rule is set, possibly for the model, rather than have this field set to Y, I can set this to yes. I'll transfer that effective date and method with the respective criteria defined in the rates and step magic code to my existing reimbursement management rule for BC and a new effective date and method with display. I'm just not going to do that right now. Last dictionary is our proration flag dictionary, and as I noted before, Okay, proration flag is used to locate accounts prior to them being billed if they're hitting certain criteria or certain thresholds that your healthcare facility may need to look at. For example, if the total deductions met or deductible, length of stay exceeding a certain length of stay, possible stop losses met, or total charges. Okay? Proration flag is used in the concurrent review report, okay, located under system management, actually under select accounts, contract management reports, and concurrent review. Okay, and this is based off a selection file. So to look up into all compiled selection files, most likely for our particular patient accounts, we would want to view those accounts that are unbilled and have a total UR charge total. So if we wanted to run those and say for any account that hits our proration flags, you compile, it would note for our reports. I just already printed this out, noting our patient, this account is not yet eligible to be billed, but look out for our total charges exceeding 2,000. We hit our total proration flag. So we may need to review that account if we're hitting, a length of stay or total deductible met, or your stop loss totals are hitting for inpatient accounts or outpatient accounts or any account. Okay. For our particular rule, we can see how it actually calculates against our patient accounts. So we're going into the process account desktop. I'm looking up our accounts, okay? One way, let's say you processed a bill and you come up with a reimbursement amounts or the total charges, or maybe you're seeing the adjustments not taken up front. You may be saying, what the heck happened with this rule? An ideal rule for routine to utilize for individual accounts is under the other menu and proration preview. Okay, and the benefit of this particular routine is we can actually preview the calculation of reimbursement for, let's say, unbilled accounts, or look at how reimbursement was calculated for billed accounts, or if possibly we want to look at if we utilize a different rule to calculate reimbursement for a particular patient account. Now, if I was an unbilled account where I had unbilled charges, I'd enter an N here for bill number, or if I had for an existing rule, and so let's say I want to see how I calculate reimbursement for bill 1. The reimbursement management rule field defaulted because the system assigned this particular rule to my patient accounts based on the criteria defined in the reimbursement management rule dictionary. Okay, and the effective date, if I do a lookup here, I could look up by the effective dates for the rules, or if I want to use the contract model effective date, and note here contract model, yes. I could say to display my worksheet, rate detail, and display the step magic code and the step magic code description, because I want to see how exactly my reimbursement was calculated. Okay, and it shows me my account information, bill number, reimbursement rule, the effective date that's valid for my patient account that I utilized, my stop loss criteria, inpatient account. Note my per diem rates and my extras and exclusions. Anything with an asterisk next to it means this is going to be used to calculate reimbursement. Okay, so my inpatient rates for each date of service, noting our per diem rate, or per day or charge category amount if it's an extra or exclusion, our total quantities, our total values for the code, and step magic code for our step magic code and its description, how it's calculating, our proration flag if it hit that. If we're failing any proration holds, okay, if it had been or it still is, in our insurance breakdown by the prorated amounts, any write-offs taken, first write-off, secondary write-off, special write-off, based on the receipts and adjustment tab, our expected reimbursement for each insurance, and our expected receipts for each particular insurance here. And nothing is calculated for an insurance or self-pay if the expected reimbursement is zero. And that is reimbursement management. I guess we can open up for any questions that you may have. Why are rules assigned to the payers? You mean, I'm sorry, this is from Elizabeth Zapp. Do you mean why are the rules assigned to the insurance providers? Let's say for the insurance mnemonic, like for Medicare rules, or, oh, well, most likely for Blue Cross as an insurance, commercial insurances, Medicare, Medicaid, or self-pay reimbursement rules, the expected reimbursement or the percentage of total charges that should be, submitted to, your insurance providers as claim submissions. Different insurance providers may have different terms of reimbursement for different procedures performed, certain materials provided, certain tests performed where they may reimburse. That's why you would have different rules associated to different insurances. And I hope that answered your question. Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, you're welcome, Elizabeth. Okay, let's see, we'll give it another 2 minutes, or we'll give it another minute, let's say, so we can get right into biller support. So hopefully I should get this done right on or just a little bit after 1 so everyone can break for lunch. I know this is a bit, you guys, your eyes are probably glossing over as I go through reimbursement in the dictionaries. Reimbursement management is possibly one of the more difficult dictionaries to learn in the bar application, definitely with STEP Magic Code. It's definitely difficult to master, or at least figure out what's going on. What I would say that, for the going through it, don't just get discouraged as I just went through it all. The whole thing about any of these dictionaries, and definitely reimbursement management, it just takes time, or just a little bit of time, just going through the rules, going through the product resource pages and knowledge base articles out there. We have a lot of resources out there for reimbursement management. And I think also providing actual template rules for reimbursement management that you can review. But don't get discouraged if you're just new to that particular dictionary. Okay, doesn't look like there are any more questions out there. So we're going to go right into biller support. All right, biller support, dealing with our accounts that are failing for our claim checks or operation holds at the bill level. Those accounts that are failing bill operation holds that we can't get bills posted. And then also claim rejections where accounts are failing for claim checks where we can't get clean claims out the door. The whole purpose of the checks is to make sure we have the cleanest accounts out there and we have our cleanest claims submitted so that we're not getting any denials from our insurance providers or our clearinghouses. Because always key with dealing with revenue cycle management, once we get that claim out the door, we want to get that money back into your facility as soon as possible. That's the whole purpose of biller support, to get the cleanest claims out there in the quickest or most efficient manner possible. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to go into the bar parameters for those parameters associated to biller support. Again, we're going to go to additional routines. And we're going to go to the view bar parameters routine. And it's just a view of the bar toolbox parameters. What we're going to look at is the biller field here for the primary criteria for the biller dictionary. The biller dictionary is one of those system-assigned dictionaries. The criteria defined in that dictionary allows the system to determine what entry in that dictionary will be assigned to your patient accounts. Now, for biller, there are two options available here: account type and insurance. Okay. Note that I didn't say primary insurance like with the reimbursement management rule, because of course with multiple insurances that may be assigned based on primary, secondary, tertiary, fourth insurance, or self-pay, you may have different billers for each of those particular insurances, regardless of order. Next, we're going to go to the Miscellaneous 1 tab. We're going to look at the biller by account or payer parameter field. Okay? There are two options here: account and payer. Payer, as Elizabeth noted in her question, the payer is the respective insurance. So based standardly by the biller dictionary, and this field is set to payer, each insurance associated to your account and its respective insurance, that insurance may be assigned its own biller based on the biller dictionary criteria. If this field was set to account, all insurances on the account would be assigned the same biller. And that biller is associated to the account's primary insurance's biller. So it would be part of the process of determining how you want to organize your biller workload, either by all accounts or respectively by the respective insurances. And I know I said respectively and respective, kind of redundant, but moving on. Okay, I'm exiting out of here. We're going to go into dictionaries, and we're going to go into biller. Okay, and we're going to look at the biller dictionary first. Okay, the biller dictionary. Okay, to look up into the biller dictionary for active mnemonics, inactive, or both, I'm going to select biller 3. Okay. Now, as I said before, biller dictionary is a system-assigned dictionary, meaning the criteria defined for each particular entry is used by the system to assign to our patient accounts. Okay. Our restrictions for assigning accounts, insurance billers to our accounts, based on insurance and or account type. So in this case, for biller 3, for insurance mnemonic of BC, Harvard, Medicare, or self-pay, will be assigned biller 3. And note there are no restrictions on account types. However, if I did assign, let's say for ER patients, any insurance and that account type would be assigned biller 3. You may have it's all dependent on how you split out your biller workload. You may have a Blue Cross biller, a Medicare biller, a commercial insurance biller, a self-pay biller, or you may have for simply those insurances and possibly segments of the account population based on patient type. Inpatients, outpatients, ER patients. It's all how you're going to organize your workload for biller support. In addition with that split out and assigning workload to our billers, and aside from the insurance and account type restriction, we can also restrict the assignment of billers by alpha split, dependent on the patient's last name or their first letter of their last name. So let's say for the insurances of BC, Harvard, Medicare, self-pay, okay, and no insurance restriction. Maybe we want to split out that workload by insurance across multiple billers. So for biller 3, let's say right now, there's nothing in the last name field, so basically A through Z, and those insurances would have biller 3 assigned. Let's say I say A, okay? That means, of course, A through Z, but we know here for patient last name A. Let's say I create another biller. Same insurances, but in the start with last name field, I enter in M. That means biller 3 for those insurances, the patient last name of A through L will be assigned biller 3. Those insurances with a patient last name of M through Z will be assigned the new biller that we made define. And it's all dependent on how you want to split out your workloads by insurances and or account types, and also for patient splits or population alpha splits. Next, we're going to go to the user tab, and based on our checks that accounts may fail during the billing and claim process, okay, we need to assign those accounts based on their rejection level to particular users for the biller work list. Okay, there are 3 levels of checks: UR checks, proration holds, and claim holds or claim rejections. Okay, UR checks, it's a claim check defined in the claim check dictionary with a function of UR check, meaning it evaluates accounts prior to them being billed. Okay, most likely you're going to use a UR check to review demographic information, maybe admit dates, birthday is missing, address info is missing, social. That would be, part of a UR check to evaluate prior to the account being billed. Proration hold in the reimbursement management rule dictionary, those are where our proration holds are defined. Okay, so if an account has a bill in preliminary status, try and prorate it or auto prorate it, we get a warning that it failed proration because it's failing a particular proration hold. Or if we have a posted bill out there and we're trying to get that claim generated, it's failing a claim check, the function of reject. Okay, that means the claim is going to be held or rejected until the necessary information that check is evaluating for gets put onto the account so that the cleanest claim can get out the door. So for each rejection out there for the UR check, proration hold, and claim checks, claim rejections, we have to define a user that's going to be assigned that particular rejection. So for UR checks, to look up into the user dictionary, for proration holds, to look up into the user dictionary, and of course, for claim rejections. Now for claims, it's a little bit more detailed with reject for users. You can simply, for a biller, assign a default user for this biller and that respective insurance, and that's all well and good. You do have the option, though, for adding in multiple users based on the evaluation of accounts using an entry from the selection dictionary. Okay, if you may be, say, a guarantor system, actually for reminders, skip that. Moving ahead of myself. A selection can be used to determine whether or not an account passes certain criteria. In this case, let's say for billers, you may be looking at accounts with high claim amounts, high dollar values. You may be looking at accounts that have claims that have rejected for, let's say, 60 days or more. That's kind of a red flag there because you keep a claim out there not sent out the door, chances are you may not get reimbursed for those claims. Okay, so you may deem high balance accounts, accounts are rejected for a long time to specific users. These may be your your users that you deem as the people that work those high priority accounts. You can define those here in the selection section and the user section. If you don't need to define those, then you really don't need to. And if you just want your default user here, you can do so there. And that's assigning your rejections based on the biller assigned to accounts to your rejections. In addition to using the rejections, we need to go into user metrics. User metrics are going to be used to determine the productivity, most likely, or usually, for our users. Let's say for me as a user, Okay? You can define for me as a user, Mark Perino, we have goal days that once an account is on my biller work list that I'm going to work on the biller desktop, for any account on the pre-bill, bill cycle, or claim rejection level, that means pre-bill, any UR check rejections, bill cycle, any proration holds, or claim rejection means any claim check rejections. I would have, for a default of 3 days, to get that rejection off of my work list so that I can get the bill and claim out the door. Now, in addition for the default goal days overall, I can define goal days for unique insurances. So let's say for AARP, I can say 5 across the board for my goal days for those rejections. For Aetna, I could say 4, 3, and let's say 3. You know, I can define individual goal days for respective insurances if I needed to. The next section here is the exclude from work list section, okay? And you see here that the heading there is claim check groups, okay? If you recall, maybe briefly, from the lookup for proration holds in the reimbursement rule dictionary, we saw the claim check mnemonic, the name, and also the claim check group to which it's associated, okay? Standardly, there are 3 claim check groups, ABS, ADM, and BAR. Noting that these may be checks that may be AB specific, maybe looking at codes or final AB status. Admissions may be registration issues, or BAR may be simply charge categories or all code issues in the BAR application, you know, dealing with any rejections. Now, exclude from work list. Any accounts that may be associated, any checks that may be associated to a particular claim group, I can exclude them from the user's responsible work list. What that means is that for a biller work list, it's kind of broken out into 2 sections, responsible and excluded. The responsible section of the work list are those accounts that your user is responsible for. The excluded work list is those that your user is not responsible for, even though it's associated to you know, the biller and the user and the insurance. The excluded work list means that no account's going to be, it's not going to fall through the cracks, okay? It just means that the user's not responsible. In the case of, let's say, ABS checks, maybe your biller, this user just simply works on BAR rejections, you know, missing charge categories, missing procedures, missing all codes. This user wouldn't deal with APC issues, wouldn't deal with getting the accounts coded in ABS, or get the ABS status as final, or maybe for ADM. Maybe the ADM users are working their own work list because we're missing address information, phone number information, next of kin information, admit date information. The user in BAR is not going to know that information. They didn't register them. So that would be the responsibility of, say, the ABS staff or the admissions staff to get those rejections, those accounts resolved. So, you know, if we need to exclude those accounts from the responsible work list, we could do so. And that's based on claim check group. In addition to assigning for the individual account for goal days, we can have these global routines for the assign default goal days, exclude or include claim check groups. So let's say assign default goal days. This is a way to define new default goal days for more than one user at a time. Now I can enter in for my user, my existing default goal days, and I can enter in individual users here in the biller section, or put in a range of billers. I could do A through Z or a certain portion of our billers to define new default goal days. It's not going to change any specific insurance goal days, just the default days. In addition, we can include or exclude claim check groups from the users responsible or exclude work list. So for those claim check groups I want to include or exclude, I would define them here. And enter in for our range of users, our particular users or range of users here. Just as a global option rather than just entering in individual users, because you may have a large number of users working your biller work list. Okay, now that we've gone through the respective biller dictionaries, we're going to go right into the biller desktop. All right, this is the main screen of the biller work list, of the biller desktop, okay? Note here, notes up here as the user. That's how I'm signed in, okay? I am signed in as Mark Perino, so my username displays here. We note rejection, and we have some dollar amounts and number values here, noting that I am a active user, okay, and I had a work list compiled. See here, my work list compiled by, well, me, and the last time this work list was compiled was today at 9:06 Eastern Time. Well, it doesn't display Eastern Time. I just know it's Eastern Time. I'm in Massachusetts, so yeah. All right. Now, most likely, if you're following with me, and you may be going into the biller desktop, and you come up in there, and as a user, you're not set up in the biller dictionary, and you see nothing for your rejections. That's okay. You didn't mess up or anything like that. Since you're not set up as a biller user, then nothing's going to display, and you're not responsible. But if you are set up as a biller user, and you have accounts out there that you saw on your UR rejection work list, your unprinted bills detail list, and your master claim rejection list or your claim file rejection list, you can compile a biller work list. And there are two options available, well, actually, three options available for compiling the work list. One is compile work list right in the biller desktop menu here. So I say here, compile for biller Mark Perino, and the last file that was created, I say yes. It's going to compile, and just to let you know, this is a real-time compilation, okay? So once it's finished compiling, it's going to update with my newest totals. I'm just going to minimize the biller desktop, okay? There are a couple of options also for compiling the biller desktop. The other is from the main claims menu and compile biller work list. And you can compile this again for an individual user, okay? Now, today, the last time I compiled it, 12/28, okay? If I wanted to do that again, or which is highly recommended because it's going to be no muss, no fuss for all of your users, is simply in the auto-compile dictionary, have the biller work list compile for your biller users on a nightly basis. So in the auto-compile dictionary for the biller queue, say from Monday through Friday, wait to close date done, as a reports. The report will be biller queue, okay? And you can say to restrict to specific users or exclude specific billers, right? Or say nothing in this value, so every biller gets the work list compiled Monday through Friday, probably at 12:05 in the morning, depending on your close day processes. So once they come in bright and early every morning, they just simply go into the biller desktop, and they have a work list compiled and ready for them to go. Okay, and give it just a moment for it to update. All right, it's updated. All right, for our rejections, okay, for our type, this is based on the level. Claim for claim rejection, bill cycle for any proration holds, and pre-bill for UR rejections. I've tried to figure this out. Well, I think it's what I'm assuming for the level, going claim first, bill cycle first, and pre-bill first. Claims are probably the top priority because you have that claim on the queue and are rejected. And we just simply need to get that claim out the door. So that's why claim is up top, which would come into play then. Bill cycle, the bill has been cut, failing a proration hold, so we need to get that out the door as well. And of course, pre-bill accounts are not yet eligible to be billed yet, but we want to get those resolved anyways so that we can hopefully eliminate any bill cycle rejections and claim rejections. Now, in addition here, we have our total dollars, total number of rejections, total number of accounts associated for each level, and the insurances for those particular claims, rules, and primary insurances on the accounts. We have here for our performance metrics, note for user Mark Perino, he had default goal days of 3 across the board for the rejection levels. And I don't believe I had any unique goal days, specific insurance goal days. Okay, so you note for my claim, bill cycle and pre-bill, resolved dollars, meaning for this work list I haven't worked anything. My average days that accounts are out there, which doesn't look too good for me, and our average goal days for each rejection level and my resolution process. See the little plus icon here, that means we're hiding information for each rejection level. If I expand that out, it shows you for each insurance, its particular resolved dollars, average days out there, and our goal days for each particular insurance. Again, with bill cycle, I'm just going to hide that for a second. I hope it didn't freeze up on me, froze up on me. Okay. Give me a second here. I'm just going to go back in. Okay. All right. And bill cycle, of course, it's going to pop up by the insurance associated with these rejections and pre-bill for the rejection. It also displays for our performance metrics by total open from the bill cycle, pre-bill, open and resolved. Don't have anything resolved here. And our average days based on how long it's taking me to resolve my rejections and our defined goal days for each rejection level. Looks like for this work list, I'm not doing too much. So what we need to do for each biller users that we're going in here, we need to get these off our work list. That means we need to resolve them. So for each rejection level, okay, for each claim rejection type, we can highlight that type. Let's go to claim first, and we select the work list button. And this notes our rejection work list. Okay, for claim rejections, you see it highlighted here, me as the user, start date compile, and 8 items listed for my rejections. For claim rejections, we note our patient name, insurance, the claim mnemonic that was tried to get generated but rejected, our claim amount, and the age of the claim since the bill was posted and the claim was queued up. When we highlight each particular account, we display our account number information, admit service date, discharge, the bill associated with the claim, insurance, policy number, subscriber, and any claim checks that were failing, which is why the account's on our work list. Okay? Now, if we want to sort our work list, depending on user's preference, we can sort our work list to work by organized alphabetically by patient last name, ascending or descending, insurance mnemonic, it's ascending or descending, claim mnemonic, ascending or descending, or possibly we want to look at possibly the highest claim amounts first, or the oldest claims out there. Well, we could also, using the filter list, if we need to filter the accounts that are out there, we could filter the accounts that are appearing just on the open work list by specific insurances, claim groups, claim, age, claim check group, dollar amounts, passing selection, or if we have both institutional and professional claims out there, we could do so. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to see about resolving my claim rejections. Okay, let's look at this user here. Okay, there are a number of options with going in and resolving our claim rejections or any rejections. Since we're dealing with claim rejections, we could use the standard claim routines in Process Account. We go into claims, we can go into screen, we could choose to print, we can note that we're failing our rejections, of course, and it'll print out the list of those rejections. But what's unique to the Biller desktop and the Biller work list is the routine process. Okay, and it pops up for this particular account. Bill number, bill type, status, cutoff date, and the particular insurance and claim user. And it notes the claim checks that I'm failing. In addition, much like the claim screen routine, we have the screen routine, the print routine, the queue routine, the hold routine, the override claim check, edit user, whether or not we want to edit the claim online or display all rejection transactions. Okay. Hopefully those are all familiar to you, and most likely you're going to go through those when you go through the claims portion of the online seminar. One key that I also want to note for this routine, for each claim check, note the little I or info icon. This is key. This is definitely beneficial. So if I look at the claim check mnemonic, and the reason I could hit this I icon, and to look up into the claim check dictionary, to provide us some information on the claim check, exactly what you'd see in the dictionary itself, where you may see whether or not all the data is entered for it. Of course it is. Whether or not this is a UR check to pre-screen UR accounts, whether or not we can edit for online editor, and provides simply the standard instructions for the check, any user instructions entered by the user, and also if there's a data list, a claim map, or the checking of a query, it would display here. Okay, now in order to process our account, let's say we're missing subscriber information for the primary insurance. If I just know off the top of my head, we can go into insurance. We can go into subscriber, let's say as an actual person who does their job at a healthcare facility. We're noting the user, the patient is the subscriber. I've done my due diligence. I'm just not entering in just rough shot over this, okay? I've entered in all my subscriber info. So I can go into process, and since I have all my subscriber info entered, I can choose to print the claim, but I'm going to choose screen. It's screening my claim for that claim and the failed checks, and survey says, okay, we're still failing some checks here. So I go into insurance, missing some policy info. Okay, let's save this. Let's try screening again. All right, this is what we want to see. For Bill 1, no failed claims. That means my claim is no longer failing any rejections. So my process here would be I can either go into claims now and print that as an individual claim, or wait till the nightly claims processing to get that included in your nightly claim file. So if I go into work list here, okay, 7 items listed, my claim has been resolved. Now let's say I want to go into another account, okay. Demographic information, we're missing an admit date, we go into process. Okay, admit date's missing, well, we gotta resolve that. Registration, go to edit, It could be that the account was solved. We say admit date. And bear with me because, of course, this is an outpatient account, okay? It shouldn't have an admit date, but I think that's how it's set up on the claim, at least in the account. Okay, no failed claims. All right. Now, that's, we could go in each particular account from process to work list and work list to each particular routine here. Note here the fields, previous account and next account. Okay, this allows us to go in for our particular screen to go to the next account in the order that we had defined here. And each time you hit previous and next, note here that it screens the account that's rejected. Possibly, if I've done any work on the account, I could have resolved the check rather than just going back in the process. So each time you go through the accounts, it will screen it through when you're going through the work list. And the previous and next fields work on every single screen and routine. So if I was on the demographic screen, let's see here for our user, that seems to be taking a bit. Okay, noting that I'm failing for an admit diagnosis. Okay, or if I go into the demographic routine, I go into previous or next, it allows me to take a look at the next, noting that it's screened, still failing. I go to the next account in order. And that's just because we have two accounts here, the same account in the work list. I want to go back to the work list. I have 6 items listed. If I go back into Biller, the main Biller desktop, hopefully for our claim level rejections, we now have resolved dollars. Okay, we have our resolved dollars for those 2 claims or the 2 accounts. We resolved those check rejections and we've corrected those. Okay, now based on how old everything is and the level, we're not going to see too much of a change here in my graph. All right, so for our bill cycle rejections, same here, we highlight it. We go into work list. Okay, and of course we have our name info, insurance, our amounts, and age since the bill was cut, since we're dealing with bill cycle or proration holds. The only difference is that we're dealing with a reimbursement rule rather than a claim mnemonic, okay? We go in here, let's see, we have our accounts. Okay, let's say here, for our account here, we go into process, final app status, okay? Noting for the bill number, type, rule, cutoff date, 84 days since cutoff, charges, the unbilled charges, which are associated to the cutoff, frozen, the charge has been charge entry on the account or the bill has been frozen, and the insurance order on the bill. Noting that the account, this claim check will fail any final or late bill when the abstract status is not final. It can be used in proration or in claims, of course, because we know that the coding on the account is finalized in apps. So for this account, most likely, this would be possibly associated to the abs claim check group. Might not be in this user's wheelhouse to resolve. But since we want to show you an option of resolving this account, actually I can't do it because all well and good, because we should not be able to edit the code screen for this account. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Now this account we can say here for app status final. Okay. Now I could go back into the process routine, okay, to note that if I want to screen the account again, based on the failed checks here, see what I'm failing. Or I could go into bills and try to prorate. Going to auto prorate for the auto prorate holds. Noting I'm failing for the claim authorization number, and it looks like a lot of subscriber info. So for my due diligence, I'm going to go into the accounts, go to the insurance, subscriber info. same as patients. Treatment authorization number. Okay, let's say I've got it, if we're manage authorization and referral, maybe this not come, okay, from ARM, which I don't think we can modify here. Okay, yep, so I can't access it. So I'm just going to file. Go into bill or go into process. Screen. And notice that I'm still failing for the authorization check, okay, which means most likely we're going to have to deal with ARM to get that resolved. Or in the case of this account where if we're dealing with subscriber info and date of birth, let's see here. Okay. And as another bonus here, got to resolve our account here. And just double checking something here, okay. So what we can do about resolving that. Okay, so if we had to edit the account and its date of birth, go into screen or auto prorate, we screen the account. Okay, note that we're still failing for the work list. Okay, we have still have our 9 rejections. Go into our work biller desktop. Okay, and from there, once we've actually screened our accounts for the billing level, we can actually decide to post the bill at that time or allow for the auto billing process to go through the nightly process and resolve those particular bills. In addition, for our UR rejections, we can go into our work list. And we can look at those accounts that need to get resolved for those rejections here. Most likely for these examples with process, we may be looking at accounts that need to get resolved in abstracting or most likely admissions. As we go through each account. Okay, knowing that as we screen them, the next account in order. Go back to the work list, and of course with UR rejections, we note for we're not dealing with particular insurance mnemonics, reimbursement rules, or claim mnemonics. We're dealing simply with insurances, account types, charge amounts, and age since the account was registered or created in BAR. That means it filed over from admissions and into BAR. And of course, we could filter our UR rejection list if we need to for our own preference. Let's say if we look at our filter, and it's kind of okay. So let's say for the age, let's say for here for well, these accounts really aren't touched too much in our system here. Okay, we note that we're only looking at accounts now 600 days or more, if there's 700, and we hit the eye icon. It notes our claim check type, responsible, and our filter list of 600 through 700, that's our age. Or if we wanted to simply look at the full list, there we go. Back to full list. I don't know what the delay is this afternoon. Okay, back to our 161 items. And we can come back to the main biller desktop once we've worked our accounts. Now, we noted when we looked at the information icon next to my name in the work list, aside from the filter list, we had the claim check type as responsible, because we're looking at the responsible work list. Okay. Here we have excluded, most likely for our particular user, if they had checks associated to a claim check group that's excluded from the responsible work list, they would display here. Okay, but since Mark Perino didn't have any excluded work lists, they wouldn't display here. So we have nothing excluded. The other option we have here are held claims. Okay. In the claim dictionary, there are a couple of options with actions, of how a claim should handle that check or the account if it fails one of those checks. You can either reject it when they appear on the biller's work list. They can either be dropped, simply dropped from the claim queue, and then regenerate it and try to drop again until it passes that criteria, or it can hold the claim. That means it holds the claim on the queue until certain criteria is met on the account. This would usually come into play when you're dealing with secondary insurances and the total reimbursement isn't received from the primary insurance. You hold that claim on the queue until that primary insurance balance is resolved. From here, from the held claims, we can choose to look at those on the claim queue checks, or look at claims that have been manually held. Okay, we can note here for our claim that's been held by me as a user. We go into the claims menu. Okay, note here that the green H means it's a manual hold. If it was an auto hold from the claim queue check, it would be a yellow square with H. Okay, note here for the little red flag noting it's a failed check. And also with the holds, whether by the claims queue or manual hold, of course you can locate those accounts using the standard claim hold routine, claim hold menu report. Let's see, the other routine that we want to look at is changing the biller. Let's say you can actually look at the work list of other users and compile their work lists. If I wanted to look at, let's say, our user, I'm not going to do that specifically because I know this user has a huge number of accounts and it takes far too long to actually take a look at. But actually, let's try this. Actually, that probably won't work. I could change the biller to look at their work list, or in the case of users that are maybe out for the day or out on leave, you can use that to work their work list aside from, editing the claim users to work those accounts. And of course, with the patient list routine, it's outside of the actual biller desktop compilation, where you can simply look at a single patient account, a patient and all their respective visits, or working a work list using the selection file routine. Basically, simply using the process desktop functionality in the biller desktop. And that's basically what you can do for any of these accounts using those routines. And that is biller support. I see there are a few questions out there. Let's see here. Just resolving, okay. All right, so let's see, Chris Loy asks, are there any reports that a manager can run to review these individual productivity measures? Yes, there are. There is, of course, the claim check rejection list, which goes by individual claim files, or the master claim rejection list. You can run the unprinted bills detail list to look at accounts that have been out there for X number of days since the bill was cut and they're filling for proration holds. And of course, the UR rejection list. Actually, let's see here. They're all found under claims. We're dealing with the UR check rejection list and the list claim rejections for the individual claim files, the master claim rejection list for all claims out there, of course, list claims on hold, the claims on manual hold, and you can run these, the rejections for individual users. Of course, the whole list the whole report will display by particular users or any user. And under bills, you can run the unprinted bills detail list for those accounts that are out there for your users. Okay, those are some of the reports that are out there for claims for biller support that your managers can use to take a look at those accounts. All right. Elizabeth Zapp asks, how will we check a payment on an inpatient account? I think what you're looking at, if I'm not mistaken, you're looking at once the claim's out there, you're expecting payment or looking for payment for the on-patient account. I think that's dealing more with collector support, where those accounts will be assigned to a collector or a collection user per the collection group dictionary and the collector desktop, where you can actually locate accounts that are expecting payments and are aging out from 0 to 30 through 365 days. Those accounts will also appear most likely on the receivables work list, as well as the reminder work list for those accounts that may be out there not receiving any payments after X number of days. In addition, you can most likely use for payments that are in there, you can use your remittance reports. I believe you'll look at denial management tomorrow. But those are the options that you can use for looking at payments for those particular accounts. Elizabeth also asked, where are these accounts held until processed? Trying to determine, trying to figure out what do you mean. If the accounts are out there and they're held, I think I'm trying to figure out if you're thinking about claims are on hold, or actually if they're on the biller desktop, we're looking at rejections for the billing process and the claims process, and until the accounts get paid off, most likely they are going to appear on the collector desktop after they've been fixed. Right. So those will be resolved, and most likely those will appear on the let's see here, for under claims, claim reports, the list claims generated report will show you for each particular claim file those accounts that have claims generated. And of course, with bills, I mean, most likely you're going to see those bills that have been posted. You may not, for the unprinted bills details list, if you don't print bills, or you can simply run your bill list for those accounts that had bills processed. And most likely, once the claim has been submitted, and after the bill has been posted, actually, the accounts will appear on the collector desktop due to your AR totals posted on the account and aging out there. And I think you'll get into that in the next couple of days. Okay. Are there any other questions or concerns out here? I know I'm just running just a little bit over. That's okay. You have me here, so any questions you have that are outstanding, please just let me know. We'll give it another 2 minutes. And of course, lunch will most likely start at 1:30 today. So maybe just a 2-minute, a short lunch by 2 minutes, but that's okay, hopefully. I'll probably just give it a minute. Everyone's probably hungry. Okay, since there are no further questions, that would be it for biller support. I hope I didn't bore all of you too much. So I hope you all have a good rest of the day and good learning more about the bar application today.
Yeah, we'll pick back up just about 1:30, and we will be doing non-charge batches and GL parameters. And then after that presentation, we'll jump into clients. We'll see you in a little bit. On the bottom, we have our client bill report program. So this parameter is used to identify the bill formats used for your organization to print client bills. The bill formats must be defined in the bar parameter so users can enter that information within the client billing group dictionary. So I just want to note here that we only see the standard mnemonic here. We don't have any alternative program names. So we just have that one, but we do have the option to add additional client bill programs as well. Next, we have the GL interface tab. And I just want to take a look at the client GL account number. So this parameter is used to define the GL account that the client receivables will be posted to on the GL side in both daily and monthly interfaces to GL. The account that is entered in this field will represent the total receivables expected from client accounts, and it includes both unbilled and billed receivables. Now that we reviewed the parameters that affect clients, let's now take a look at the dictionaries that affect the billing of clients. So we're going to go to dictionaries off of the main bar menu. And the first one we're going to take a look at is the account type. So you're going to go over this if you haven't already. The system uses account types to assign billers, rate schedules, reimbursement rules, and claims to accounts. This is used as the building block for all other system-assigned dictionaries. The account type assigned in the client within the Enter Edit Client routine is used when reporting transactions to the GL module. So if we look here, we have one specifically for clients. This is for outpatients. We give it a GL revenue component. Once we define the corporation, that's grayed out. We can't change that anymore. And we'll see that once we go into the desktop for clients. So we'll come back to that as well. So next, we're going to take a look at the rate schedule dictionary. And the rate schedule dictionary is used for alternate prices to charge for procedures for selected patients, and it's used to define groups of accounts for which non-standard charges apply. The restrict to client accounts, let me just bring one up here, should be set to yes, meaning that the fee schedule can only be used for client accounts. The fee schedule will need to be manually assigned to clients within the Enter Edit Client routine, which we'll cover shortly. So I now want to bring up an account example that is associated to the fee schedule, so that way you know where to look when it's on the patient account. So let's go to process account. Some things I want to point out here, we see CR, so that means that this is the client status account. And we also see that the account has a fee schedule defined, and this one is associated to the client fee schedule. All right, so now that we've looked at the rate schedule dictionary, we're now going to take a look at the charge procedure dictionary. And Let me just bring up a charge procedure. So this dictionary allows users to define the price for each procedure the hospital performs. Within the dictionary, users are able to define standard prices as well as alternate rate schedule prices. So as we discussed, the client discount here, this prompt needs to be set to yes. Any charges posted directly to the client will be eligible for a client dollar volume discount. So I'll show you those prompts once we go into the client desktop. But we can see here that this particular charge is eligible for a dollar volume discount. When we go to the rate replacement tab, you can assign rate schedules to the charge procedure, and accounts associated to that rate schedule defined in this field would get a special price. So here we already looked at the client fee schedule. I have client defined here. We have an effective date of January 1st, 2001 with a charge of $150. If there are any accounts that are not associated to a fee schedule, those accounts that get that particular charge is going to get the standard charge amount, which in this case, the most recent effective date, January 1st, 2006, is $164.28. Next, we'll take a look at the non-charge procedure dictionary. So you would use this dictionary to define codes for non-charge procedures. All non-charge procedures must have an insurance of self-pay in order to be used for client accounts. So we have one for adjustments. We see here the procedure type is adjustments. We see that the insurance defined is self-pay. We have fee client, which is for our receipts. Again, the insurance is self-pay. And our client, which would be used for refunds. And you can also define an override for any of these procedures. We don't have anything defined here, but we'll talk about that a little bit more once we jump into the desktop. So the next dictionary we're going to take a look at is the Client Billing Group Dictionary. So the Client Billing Group Dictionary was introduced back in 5.5 service release, and this dictionary allows you to define rules that determine when clients in each billing group becomes eligible for billing. So we'll go over this dictionary prompt by prompt. So the first thing we're going to do is create a mnemonic, whether or not this dictionary is active, and we're going to give this mnemonic a name. So we see client billing group bi-monthly. The bill format is used to print bills for the client using the print bills routine within the client's menu. The users have a lookup to the client bill formats that were entered in the bar parameters. So here you can see any of the bill formats that were defined. And if you remember, when we looked at the client bill format, there was only the standard one defined. So that's why we only see standard in our lookup here. If the bill format entry is blank, you'll get a soft warning that will indicate that client bills will not be printed for this group. So I'll just show you what that would look like. And that will be the error message. Set that back to standard. So the alternate format will allow you the ability to enter an alternate format to use when printing client bills for this client billing group. So again, because we only have the standard bill format defined in the bar parameters and there was nothing else defined, we're going to leave this field blank. The print bill is a yes/no prompt and will determine if client bills will be printed or not. If this prompt is set to yes, then all bills will print after they are posted. If it's set to no, then client bills in this billing group will not be printed. Auto start is also a yes/no prompt. It will determine whether or not the system should automatically print client bills during the closed day process for this particular client billing group. Once this is set to yes, you will be prompted to define a task type and name. So for path types, your options are printer or download, and once that's defined, you would then define the path. So this brings us down to the date range schedule. So the date range prompt is a yes/no prompt, and when this prompt is set to yes, you're able to enter a date range schedule that you would like billed for this client. This is very similar to patient interim billing. When the date range prompt is set to no, you do not have the option to select a date range, and the client bill will include all charges on the account, no matter what the service date may be, similar to the way that final bills are generated for patient accounts. If the date range prompt is set to yes, we see here, you have access to the lost charges prompt. If you enter yes at this prompt, your date range will include any lost charges from previous months. For example, you can have a May client bill that also includes lost charges that were for February or April. If no is entered in the include lost charges field, then the client functionality will work the way that it was designed to before this particular update, which means that it will bill for only those charges, and any lost charges, lost charges will not be included in that bill. So there's three possible scenarios with the client billing group functionality. You can have the date range prompt set to no, which means now our include lost charges is grayed out. We don't have the option to include lost charges in our bill. We can't define a date range, but we can define the cutoff date for our bill. So we could say on the 5th, we want to cut bill for our client. And any charges that are entered on any client accounts or patient accounts associated to that client will cut a bill on the 5th of the month. If the date range prompt is set to yes, we now have the option to set the include lost charges to yes. And the client bill will include charges in that date range for any lost charges found on the client account. We also have to define a cutoff date, and now we can define our range. We can say the 1st to the previous end of month. We can also set the date range prompt to yes and the include lost charges to no. And when that is defined this way, then the client bill will only include charges within that date range. So if you want any additional information on this, I have a knowledge base article that you could review, and it's 26654. And so that will go over how those date range, the date range schedule prompts work within the client billing group dictionary. All right, and this brings us down to the corporation name and address override. So these prompts allow a different name and address to print on the client bills instead of the ones that are defined in the customer parameters. Simply define the corporation, the name of the corporation will default in, and then you can define the override address that you want for your bill. Once this is complete, you can then hit F12 to save. When you save your client billing group, it's going to ask you if you want to preview the date range schedule. We'll say yes. Okay. Let us know that the cutoff date for the next 3 months, along with the date range and the from and through date, so that way we know when the bills, what it would include. So on February 5th, we're going to see charges from January 1st, 2018 to the 31st, so on. So at this time, I'm going to stop to see if anybody has any questions on the parameters or any of the dictionaries that I've gone over so far. Okay, since there's no questions at this time, I'm now going to move on and go to the Process Client desktop. And we're going to bring up a client account that already exists. We're going to take a look at JWFit. And I'm going to go to client data. Some things I should note. So this summary screen is going to show us the mnemonic and the name of the client. We're going to see the client's address, city, state, zip, phone number, all of our information for the client. So the client billing group that we're going to use, if there's any pending patient charges, unbilled charges. So this screen is going to give us a summary of everything that's occurring on this client account. So I'm going to start by going to the client data. We're going to go to edit mode, so that way we can kind of talk about every prompt here. So this routine is used to set up client accounts. This is where users will maintain client demographic information, procedure codes associated with special prices, and fee schedules if desired. Clients can be entered in admissions and in the bar modules. However, when entering them in admissions, you must make sure that the client mnemonic in admissions matches the client mnemonic in bar exactly. The client mnemonics do not match, then the default client from the parameters will be assigned to the patient account. To enter or edit the clients, select the Enter Edit Data tab. So we went to Client Data and selected the Edit footer here. And we're just going to kind of go over every prompt here for a moment. So we have our mnemonic. We gave our client a name, whether or not it's active. We have the address, city, state, and zip. There was a phone number. We would define that here. And our remark field, this is used for free text. It's up to 60 characters long. So you can capture any additional information about this client that may be helpful for users. Next is the account type field. This does not impact the patient's account type. The account type entered here will be used to report to GL any charge, receipt, refund, or adjustments that were posted directly to the client. Once the account type is defined, the corporation that's associated to that account type will default in. So you'll see I don't have access to that. That's being selected based on what was defined for that account type. The discount procedure, here we have a lookup to all of the to our non-charge procedure dictionary. And this is where you would enter the adjustment procedure codes that you want to use when applying discounts to the client. So here we have all adjustment, self-pay, non-charge procedures. We have one specifically for clients. It's called A.Client. Next, we have our fee schedule. Again, our fee schedule is used to define a special price for any accounts associated to that fee schedule. So here you can enter the fee schedule that you want to assign to the client. So we have a lookup to all of our client fee schedules, and we're reviewing clients, so we'll use that here. Next, we have our client billing group. So here you can define the client billing group that should be associated to this client. It tells the system when to cut and print bills. Freeze charge entry, this is a yes/no prompt that when it's set to yes, it can be used to prevent users from entering new charges on the selected client account. Print patient social security number is the yes/no prompt. To print the patient social security number on client bills, enter yes, otherwise enter N for no or leave this field blank. Discount direct charges is a yes/no prompt that determines if charges posted directly to the client will be eligible for dollar volume discounts. Please note that this only applies to those procedures that have the client discount prompt in the charge procedure dictionary set to yes. Let's jump this down to the dollar volume prompt. So if desired, you can use this field to give clients a percentage discount on dollar volume of eligible charges for a given bill. You can enter the minimum dollar amounts in this field which you want to apply the discount to. If the dollar volume on the bill equals or exceeds this figure, the discount is applied when posting bills. The account can either be flat, that is applicable to all dollar amounts, or it can be entered as a series of incremental steps, which would typically increase with volume. For example, if you want to give a 5% discount up to $1,000, you would enter a 5% discount. You would enter, a 5% discount up to $1,000. You would enter $0. You have to enter the dollar value as you see here. And then in the percent discount prompt, you would enter 5. As for a 10% discount from 1,000 to 3,000, we would enter $1,000 in the dollar volume and then a 10 in the percent discount. And if you want to give a 15% discount for anything above $3,000, you would enter 3,000 on the dollar volume side and 15 in the percent discount side. Please note that the only charges with the client where the client discount prompt is set to yes in the charge procedure dictionary, and as long as it's not listed within the special procedures, will be eligible for the dollar volume discount. And we'll review this momentarily. First, I want to take a look at the ALT code priority. Here's where you would define the order in which you want ALT codes to appear on client bills. You have an F9 lookup to the ALT code type defined in the customer parameter. If you don't want ALT codes to show up on the client bill, then you leave this field blank. So in the procedure special price field, you would define the procedure for which your organization wants to give a special price when it's posted to the client or patient associated to the client. For instance, we see here a charge procedure with a special price of $80. So if we brought this charge up in the charge procedure dictionary, we'd see it has a very high charge amount. And we also have a client fee schedule, which is $560, but for this particular client, it has a special price of $80. Next, we have transaction queries to print on bill. Here, you can enter queries to print on your client bill. So the query responses that you want to print on the client bill, here we have transaction level queries that you enter on the screen that will print below. So we have current smoker, and then the response would print on the bill. Let me see if I have an account example we can bring up to review that. $4,895. So if I go to in-process account, if I look at the process CVS transaction, we can see current smoker is set to no. So that would print on our bill once the bill is generated, and we'll see that momentarily. So before I move on about posting transactions to a client account, I'm going to see if there are any questions on anything that I've covered. Okay, there's still no questions, and now what I'm going to do is going to process batches. So as I stated earlier, there are two different types of client billing. There's direct client billing, where charges are posted directly to the client, and indirect client billing, where charges are posted to the patient associated to the client, then transferred over to the client account when the client bill is cut. So I'm going to show you the differences between the types of client billing while posting charges within a batch. In this first example, I'm going to post a charge to a patient account associated to a client. So I'm going to bring up new journal, a new batch. And the first one, I'm going to put in an account example. So this is our patient account. We can see a CR that is a client status. We can enter a service date of today, time of now, and we're going to post a charge. Charge we saw before. It has a client fee schedule assigned with the special price of $150, which is going to print, which is going to post on the account. And we can fill out the current smoker, say no, and save that transaction. We can also post directly to a client. And we do so by putting that ampersand, and we can do an F9 lookup to all of our active clients in our system. So we have our JW Fits that we were working on. And here I can put a transaction service date of today, now, and I can enter a charge. These are for gloves. So we can say we have quantity of 100. And nothing after 12. One thing I forgot to show you is you see that the status is different. Here we see CL. So this is also a client status, but this shows CL means that it's posted directly to the client instead of a patient associated to the client. The CR is a status for patients associated to the client, and CL is for direct client charges, direct client. So once you save that, we can post. Okay, because the transaction count is running. And now I should be able to post. And we'll give that a moment to post. So now that we've gone over the client setup and how to post charges directly and indirectly to the client, let's now review client routines and reports. Actually, before we get there, I just want to show you the patient account. So if I go back to Process Account Desktop and bring up the patient account associated to the client, I just want to show you in the inquiry, we look at all collection transactions. So we can see when charges are posted to the patient, and whenever a bill is cut, all of those charges are transferred from the patient account to the client account. And we'll see that on the patient account. We'll see a procedure for client transfer, and we'll see that all of the charges are then transferred from the patient account to the client, which would bring the account to a zero balance. So here I just posted another charge of $50, and once I cut a bill, that will get transferred over to the patient account. I mean the client account, sorry. So going back to the Process Client Desktop, we'll go to Inquiry. And we're first going to look at Charge Inquiry. And we'll look at the Charge Category Summary. So this screen is used to print an account summary sorted by charge categories for the client. This routine will group all patient charges together. So we see this patient charges here. And any other charge categories defined on the screen have been directly posted to the client, meaning that the charges were never posted to the patient account associated to the client. So once we highlight the charge category that we want to review, we could then look below to see the date that it was posted, the procedure, who posted the transaction, the description, and the amount. Charge category detail will print detailed information about transactions with charge categories for a single client. So we can see the date, service dates for the procedure, the user who posted them, the description of the procedure, the amount. And here you can see that we have batch information, so we can see when those transactions were posted. We can edit that information by our filters. So the edit footer allows us to edit the information that we're seeing. We could view just unbilled, lost, cost amount. We have the ability to look at our CPT code. And we'll also look at batch information. So then that'll take a minute to process. So now we can see the CPT information, so we can just edit, and then below we could see, because I had a second option for batch, so we could see the batch information once we highlight the transaction in question. We can sort by transaction service date and whether or not it should be by ascending or descending. So we can edit that to make it so that it's more user-friendly and what's easier for the users to view this information. So you can definitely sort that information when you're viewing the screen. Department, the screen will display GL department number, name of department, number of transactions, and the total amount of those transactions. So we have the ability to highlight the department in question, look at the description for that department, the total count for those transactions, the total amount that adds up for all of those transactions, and then it will get broken down by procedure below, so we can see, what charges make up for that are in that department. So it's based on which department we're highlighting, the information below will change, and we can also sort, how we want this to be viewed. I can change it to description. Okay, so we see that the description changes. Next, we have our procedure screen, and this screen is used to view a summary of the procedures and transactions applied to the client account. This routine provides the procedure, the description, and the number of transactions for the procedure and the total amount of charges or credits for each procedure. So again, we can just highlight the procedure in question, and then we can see the total amount, and then if we view below, we can see additional information for that procedure. We see that there was one charge reversed off, so we see that the total amount is $29 because these two charges will wash out, and then we have one for $29. So based on which one we highlight, the information below will change. Last, we have bill, the bill tab, and this screen is used to view both billed and unbilled transactions. The screen provides users with the bill status, the number of transactions, and the total amount for the bill. So we could see the bill if it was printed, we could see if it's reversed, and then we can see all the information for that charge, for that bill. We can see the procedures that make up that bill, the amount, the user for those transactions. And again, maybe I don't want to start with bill number one, maybe I want to start the most recent. So we'll see our unbilled charges currently. We have $75, so these are the charges that I posted directly to the client today within our batch. And our last posted bill is $30. That was done on 1/8/18. And we can see the charges that make up that amount. We see patient charges, which means that they're charges that were associated to a patient account and transferred to the client. Next, we'll take a look at bill inquiry balance summary. So this routine is used to list clients' overall balance, summarizing activity from all of its bills. This report provides users with the bill number, the bill status, bill cutoff date, date range date, the total charges for that bill, and the total balance for that bill. So we can see here for bill 30, 30 is in a posted status. It tells me when it was cut off, for what date range. We see the total amount of charges for that bill, and the current balance for our client. So we could see there was no direct charges, based on the activity for the bill. There was $50 worth of patient charges. We don't have any receipts, but we do have an adjustment of $2.50, which brings our balance down to $47.50. If we view transaction detail, this routine is very similar to the bill balance summary report, but this report provides a list of all the selected transactions that are associated with a specific bill. Perhaps I just want to see adjustments, receipts, and refunds for our bills. So I'm going to see here I have an adjustment of $2.50 for bill 30. And that's what's making the difference between 50 and 250 is $47.50. And again, we have the ability to edit our sorts. Maybe I just want to see charge information. So you can always edit to see what information you want to review. And you can, sort your values, the order, and how you want to see this information. Making it a little bit more user-friendly. Next, we have other inquiry. First one we have is all collection transactions, which does just that. It's used to list all transactions associated with the client. The screen will display the following information. So above, we're going to see the patient information, such as the account number, that patient's the client, the name, the address of the client, and the phone number, some cumulative account balance. Below, we're going to see batch date, journal numbers, and for each transaction on the bill, this report will list the user who created the batch, transaction or procedures, bill numbers, and for bills with their related transactions, the description and amount. Transactions posted on or after. This is a date inquiry routine that's used to list billing procedure transactions that occurred on or after a specified date for the client. So this routine is very similar to all collection transactions, but you're just specifying when you want to see which transaction dates you want to use. Our refunds transactions, this routine is used to view refunds information associated to this client. This report will show users the date and the refund that was entered, the user who entered the refund, and the refund procedure description and refund amount. So we can see here that on June 1st, 2016, there was a refund on this particular client. We can see the batch date, and there was an override defined, so we could see the refund override name and address and city, state, and zip. So all that information can all be displayed on the screen. Next, we have our select transactions. So this routine is used to list specific transactions associated to this account. You have the option to select one or more of the following. We can do adjustments, bill post, bill print, any of these we can do. Maybe I want to see any letters that went out. And so we could see what was printed. And then I could use the footer options below to edit what we're seeing. So maybe I want to see all of the client transfers, and I'll see all that information here based on the criteria that I defined. The Bills tab on the right-hand side, this routine will allow users to process client bills. So we have the option to demand a bill, and you can use this routine to manually generate a bill for a client that has unbilled charges. So we can choose, I just posted charges today using today's service date. So if I wanted to, do I want to use date range for bills? So let's say I posted some transactions for December today. I could always then just choose our date range for, December 1st to the 31st. Otherwise, I can use from and through dates of today, the 1st to the 9th. Whether or not I want to include lost charges, allow $0 bills, yes or no, and whether or not I want to queue client bill for printing, this is yes or no. And then I can demand my bill. For the time being, I'm just going to hold off so that way I have some examples to use for some scenarios. So actually, I'll just print it and we'll just reverse the bill. So it's going to cut the bill and just take a moment. All right, so we could see bill number 31, all of the charges and patient transfers along with any adjustments and the current balance for that bill. The reverse bill routine is used to reverse a posted bill. So for this case, I do want to reverse bill 31, so that way I have something to show you momentarily. So we'll give that a moment. The print bill routine is used to manually print a bill for a client. So we can print bill 30, print to preview. Actually, so what we'll see here, I said it's to preview, but we can see any balance forward, any receipts, adjustments, or refunds posted to this bill, any direct charges, patient transactions, whether or not there was any discounts, and the total balance due for the client. On the second page, this is where it's going to break out all of those accounts associated to the client. So we have our account number, the name of the patient, the charges question, when it was posted, the service date. We're going to get a description, and that's what we would see on the screen. You'll notice that the print alt bill is grayed out, and that's because we don't have an alternate bill format for this for the billing group defined for this client. So therefore, we don't have the option to print an alternate bill format. However, if there was one defined, we would then be able to access that and print that alternate format. Next, we have our collections. We have our comment inquiry. So comments are messages that provide information for a client. If any were defined for the client, you can use the inquiry to review the comments posted. We have the option to enter or edit comment information by using this footer button. So we can edit a already existing comment, or we could create a new one. By defining the bill number. We can look at canned text, or we can use free text. So I can put in, please review. And now we have a new comment. We can sort here. So we can look at descending. That way we can see the most recent comment text. Next, we have our reminder inquiry. Reminders are messages that prompt the user to follow up on an account. This routine is used to view any reminders assigned for the client. we see that we have 2 that are currently in an open status. And if we wanted to, we could create a new reminder, or we can respond to a reminder. This is used to respond to any open reminders associated to this client. And you can respond to a reminder in one of the 3 ways. You can resolve the reminder with a new reminder or comment. You could record a comment about the reminder, so that way the reminder is not resolved. Or you can enter a note to tell the user to resolve the reminder at a later time. The letter inquiry is used as a way to, letters are used as a way to communicate with your client. For example, you may want to send out a client letter to inform them that a payment is overdue. So this screen provides you with the user who printed a letter, the date it was printed, and the mnemonic of the letter that was printed along with the description of whether or not it was printed. So we can see here, 2 letters have gone out. We see the dates that they were printed, the letter that was used, and we see a description of printed, which means the letter has been printed. Okay, now we'll look at client report. Here is where first we'll take a look at list pending balances. You see that the screen opens up. We can see if there's any lost charges, and we can see any pending transactions. So we see for pending transactions that we had charges that were posted, one for today. So this would show up on the January bill. And then our lost charges, we could see that there was a transaction that was posted on December 26th, so a bill had already cut at this time, and so this is a lost charge that will get included on our January bill. The list pending balances report. I'm going to run that real quick. So this report will show any pending patient charges for this client. For each client, this report will display a detailed list of all pending patient charges sorted by account name and then by service date within each account. So we only have 1 page. We see the unbilled charges, any pending charges, patient number, and service date, the procedures in question, the amount, and the description of the charge. The list build details, I'm just going to leave all the defaults here. From patient, beginning through end, and we'll do beginning through end for the bill cutoff, because this is an in-house ring, we might not have a lot of detail here. But this report will print the total charges for the selected client, the service dates and bill cutoff dates, so we can see all of our client information before pay date of 1/9/18. We see our patients that make up our client, the service date on the account, the bill numbers, our cutoff dates, date ranges, and the total amount. So that's our bill details. And the list lost charge report will list all of those lost charges for that specified client. So basically what you're seeing on the screen, we can see the patient account, the service date, batch date, procedure, the description for the procedure, quantity, and the amount. Again, to include lost charges, you can either do that by having the include lost charges prompt in the client billing group dictionary set to yes. You can reverse the client bill and demand a new one if your client billing group is not set up to include lost charges. Or you can demand a new client bill for that same date range, so that way you can just demand a bill and get those transactions posted to a bill. In the last routine, in the client desktop that we'll review right now is the reverse and flag transaction. And this routine can be used to reverse transactions such as charges, receipts, adjustments, refunds that were posted directly to the client and are not included in a posted or printed bill. This functionality is very similar to the reverse and flag routine that's found in process accounts, which can be used to reverse and flag patient charges posted to an account associated to a client. So here we can see all of our procedures that would be eligible to be reversed. Right now we only have gloves, choose the service date, and if you want to reverse that transaction, you would simply hit OK. Okay, so before I move on to any global client reports, I'm just going to take a moment to see if anyone has any questions, and then we'll move on from there. So Elizabeth, I see that you asked a question about why do charges are showing as offsetting or flagged when we were reviewing charge inquiries. So I'm just bringing this up again, but it looks like the charge was then reversed for that account. So they posted a negative quantity. So instead of using the reverse and flag transaction, this user just posted a negative quantity, which basically reverses this particular charge off of the account. So that's why we're seeing, an offsetting flag here. Or actually, I think even if you just reverse the charge, it would give you that offsetting flag as well. So it could be that's actually probably what happened. We probably just reversed and flagged transaction and then selected the procedure to reverse off, and it shows that description of offsetting transaction. You're welcome, Elizabeth. So Eric, you have a good question as well. So you say, after processing an indirect client registration, how long until after does the charge move from the patient to the client? So to answer that question first, that's determined by the Client Billing Group Dictionary. So let me just bring up the Client Billing Group Dictionary real quick. So here, let's just say that this is the Client Billing Group that we're using, and we'll see that we have a date range set up. So this is saying on the 5th, we want to cut off from the previous month, first of the month to the end of the month. So on January 5th, what happened here was we cut a bill for December charges from the 1st to the December 31st, based on how we have this defined in the Client Billing Group Dictionary. Now, based on whether or not you have your system set up to automatically do that, we'll go over that momentarily. That's done. I'm going to show you that process later on. Or you can then go into the desktop. On the Bills tab, you can then demand a bill and manually do a date range. So we can just do, well, this is going to tell me. So we can do from 1/1/18, and then we can do until T today to manually demand a bill for that range. Or if we wanted to do it for December, we already have December charges, but I'm just going to show you. This is the date range for that. So it's going to default in the service date from 12/1/17 to 12/31. Then you choose whether or not you want to include lost charges, allow $0 bills, yes, whether or not you want a queue for printing. Yes. Okay. And then it will cut bill number 32. So we can see bill 32, we did have charges that were for December 1st to the 31st included here. So we can print our bill to view it. And the transactions that make that $50. Make sure that I answered all of your questions. Is there a way to manually move charges off a patient account onto the client? So once you demand a bill manually on a client, that's going to transfer those charges off of the patient account to the client account. So let's actually bring up this account example here. So we have account B4895. So when I look at all collection transactions, we'll see on 1/9/18, there was a client transfer of $50 that was sent to the client. And the reason why there's a $150 balance is because there's transactions for January that I didn't send over to the client yet. So that's why we see 150 there. So if I demand another bill on the account, that cut a bill for January. So if I go back to process account, get out of the screen real quick. You'll see that there was another client transfer done, and the $150 was then transferred over to the client account, bringing this account to a zero balance. So, and in case we want to demand a bill for the client immediately. So that's exactly what you could do. Once a bill, a charge has been posted to the client account, you can then manually demand a bill, just as you just saw me do within the client bill desktop. You just go to demand a bill and demand it for the date range that you need. Does that answer your question? You're very welcome, Eric. And Abe, I am currently using CS567, not 6.0 at this time, but I believe that this is the same in 6.0, which is why we've merged CS567 and 6.0 seminars together. All right, so now that we've gone over how to do, we went into the client desktop, we looked at all of the routines, inquiry routines, we demanded a bill manually. I'm going to go over the global routines with you. So the first thing that we're going to do is we'll look at the client. We'll go to clients menu off of the main bar menu. And the first one we're going to do is bills. Just kidding. I'm actually going to go into current client balance report first. So we're going to print the current balances. I'm just going to leave the default. So what this is going to do is it's going to look at, based on what I'm putting in, all of the client numbers. So I want to look at everything because, again, we're in an in-house ring. I don't have as much detail for client accounts. So we're just going to look at everything for all of our account types, for all of our corporations. Do I want to include clients with a 0 current balance? Yes. And include clients with no current activity? No. I'll leave that default. And make this a little bigger. So the current client balances report will list your current balances for the client portion, excluding patient charges for current billing period and the 3 previous periods. So this report will display the mnemonic, the name of the client, the last pay date, the balance, whether or not there's any pending charges, which now we don't have any because I had just manually submitted a bill. Current charges, and then we have our current month and our last 3 previous months. And again, if you actually ran this in a live setting for hospitals that do use claim billing through Meditech, your data would look a little different than mine, or more realistic. Next, we have the pending balances detail. So this report will list pending patient charges for clients, for a range of clients. For each client, the report will display a detailed list of pending patient charges sorted by account name and then by service date within the account. This report can be used to preview charges that were transferred to the client account. So I just thought we don't have any pending charges, it looks like, based on our previous report. Just want to double check. So we're probably not going to get anything on this one. We'll see that there's 0 here, but if I unbilled our January charges, then our bills, then we would have some charges amounts here, but we'll leave that as is right now. So here it's going to display all of our client numbers, the names, the current balance, any unbilled charges, and our pending charges. If there are any patients that made up the pending charges, we'll see that patient number here, and service date, procedure, amount, and description based on the charge information that was posted. So I can always let me just unbill this so that way we can run that again and just view that information. So now that that's reversed, let's rerun this, leaving all the defaults. So now we can see we have $150 that are pending and the patient number and name that makes up those transactions, along with the client in question. Next, we'll take a look at the Bills tab. We'll look at the bill preview. So you would use this report to list client bills that the system will cut if cutoff is to run for a future date. Client bills can be previewed for all client billing groups or select client billing groups. They can also include patient detail information, including charges on the report. If patient detail information is excluded, the report prints a summary of charges by client. The last close date appears to default. The response for cutoff prompt. After entering a cutoff date, this routine performs a mock client bill cutoff for the selected date. So if I use 18, we want to search all groups, include client patients. Yes. All right, so we can see that If I'm running mock cutoff for February 5th, we don't have anything for these two clients. For JW Fit, we can see that bill number 34 would be created. We can see the date ranges that would be included, the charges of $150. We have $50, $75 worth of charges on the client account, so that's why we see $225 here as well. And then it gives us the billing group totals. See that here, it's going to define the default, the billing group that's used for that particular client and how that differs from the ones on this first page. The cut bills routine is used to begin the billing process for clients. I just want to note that when you cut client bills, the system compiles all eligible bills, including unbilled charges, charge transactions of the client's patient account based on the cutoff schedule that you have defined in the billing group dictionary. If the transaction dates fall within the date range of the bills, the system will transfer all the pending patient charges to the account receivable field of the process client screen, and you can run client cutoff only once a day globally. So you can only do this once a day, but you can always, if you needed to demand a new bill for a client, you can always go into the client desktop and demand a bill, as you saw me do a few times today for our client in question. Okay, but this particular routine can only be done once per day. The list unprinted bills routine is used to list client bills that have been cut but not yet printed. So I can leave, and I'm going to do all unprinted bills yes. It's going to give me my cutoff date, whether or not I want to print a summary or detail. We'll do detail. Okay, so we can see the billing group, the client, our bill number, our date ranges, our cutoff, and charges. Okay, so see that right here. We have bill 32 that still has not been printed yet. So if we needed to, we can always go in and print bills globally by using this routine. After you've compiled bills to be cut, then you can use this routine to print the client bills, and the system also prints bills that that users demanded manually and queued for printing via the demand client bills routine. So if we wanted to print for all bills that are ready for printing, we would choose yes, and then defaults are from and through cutoff date. We're going to get a file number assigned for these bills. And if we wanted to test alignment to view the bills, we can view that information here as well. The list printed bills routine is used to list client bills that have printed. Simply enter the file number assigned to the client bills when they were printed that first time. So we can see today I printed bills, and then we can list the printed client bills again to view. And there's no record. Let's say that for an error occurred, maybe I had a printer jam and I needed to reprint my client bills. I can go here, enter the file number for the bills in question, enter the bill format, enter the client in which to start printing. So I have a lookup here, and I want to start with JW Fit. Test alignments, yes. And then we can reprint our bill. So the list lost charge report, I'm not going to run this. We've already done this a few times today, but this routine will list all the lost charges for clients or select clients, but at a global level. So instead of doing it for one client, this is going to run it for all of your clients, and you can see all of the lost charges for all of your client accounts on one report. Our bill detail, this routine will print the total charges for selected clients, service dates, or bill cutoff. Patient accounts that meet all of the following criteria will appear if the patient is associated to one of the selected clients, the patient account has date service on or before the selected service date, the account was billed within the selected billing dates, and the patient client paid on or before the selected last payment date. So we ran this when we looked at our one client account. So at this time, I'm going to move on just to save a little bit of time to make sure that we are able to go over all of the reports before we're done for today. Next, we have our period end client balances report. So you would use this routine to print information for the past 3 periods for a range of client accounts. This report will include the following information. Let me just define all of this. We're going to leave all the defaults. I'm going to do for period T-1. I might not have a lot of information just because, again, we're in an in-house ring and we're not always entering information on a regular basis for our client accounts. We'll give that one moment. So here we're going to see the client name, the client mnemonic, the last pay date, the balance, whether or not there's any pending, current charges, our current period that we are running the report for, along with the 3 previous periods as well. Again, not very realistic what we're seeing here right now on my screen, but if you were to run this in the live setting for users that do use Meditech clients, this information would be more realistic. You would see as many zeros for sure. The print client revenue comparison report. Bring that up. And I'm going to run it for all period. So this routine will summarize all of the charges billed to selected clients for the following time periods. So we put in December 17, and it's also going to show the 12 fiscal periods preceding the specified period. So this report, again, doesn't look very realistic because of our in-house ring, but this does not include charges entered during the current fiscal year. So we're going to see the current fiscal period, sorry. It's going to include the name and number of the client, the total charges billed during each of the 12 billing periods, beginning with the selected period. And you can use this information on reports to track client billings for a fiscal year. For example, suppose that you need to determine if the amount of client receivables for a period in one fiscal year is lower than the amount for the same period in another fiscal year. You can print one report, run report each fiscal year, and then compare the client charges for those periods in question. Okay, and this takes us to collections. So this is the global collections routine, and it can be found here under our main client menu. The first thing that I want to take a look at are reminders. Client reminders help collectors at your healthcare organization manage collections process for client accounts. For the global reminder routine, we can transfer. We can list client reminders. We can queue client reminders, and we can review the client reminder summary. So starting with transfer, here is where you can, where client reminders are transferred from one user to another for a range of dates. The number of days to add to the due date of any late open reminders could also be defined here. The system calculates a new due date for any late reminders it transfers to the new user. Transferred reminders appear on the client reminder activity summary report, which will be covered in a little bit. So I think Mark had a reminder, which we can then send to myself. And we're going to add 5 days. And there was one reminder transferred to my user, Emeran. We'll take a look at that in a moment. So the queue client reminders routine is used to compile a list of open client reminders for a user. If there were a previous file on the queue, it would default in. So we can see that. We can see that it was created on 1/10/17. There was 0 resolved. There's 2 open. So if we do T+5, our major sort, here I can define a major sort of clients. That's what I'm going to use as my variable. If I wanted a second or third sort, I can certainly define that here, but that's optional. We'll hit save. And it's going to create a new file number, and I have 2 reminders in there. So to process client reminders in a queue file compiled, the user can then process their own reminders or reminders assigned to another user in the work list found within the process client routine. So what we can do now is go to the client desktop. Go to work list, select the user, which is myself. So that's going to default to the most recent file number. We can see the date, the compiled, and the through date. My major sort that I defined. We have our reminder status. What do we want to see? Open, resolved, or all? We'll see all. Okay. Okay, and we have the 2 open reminders where I could then, go and work on those reminders so that I can complete those reminders and get them resolved. Keeping that open for a moment. Going back to client and collection. Next, we have our list client reminders routine. And this routine is used to list client reminders for a range of users and dates. Users have the option to include clients with $0 balances and to include collection transaction detail for each client on the list. So let me just have all of the details. See, we don't want to do client collection detail right now. Do we want to list by client name, number, or by reminder date? We'll do name. And we'll run that real quick. So we can see that there's a reminder for JW5th. We can see the reminder date, the balance, and we can see the reminder itself that needs to be reviewed. The last routine in the reminders menu is the reminder activity summary. And this routine gives the ability to list reminder activity in a summary format for a range of users and reminder dates. The report is used to track information for users such as the number of reminders that the user resolved, the canned text used for the reminders, the number of reminders transferred to and from a user. So really this just can be used, maybe you want to review what, your collectors have been doing. Is one collector getting bogged down? It needs help. We can use this report to see, what's going on with our reminder summary. So we can see it will get broken down by user, if it was resolved, how many are due, and so forth. So right now, go to Emeran. Currently, I have 3 2 unresolved. We can see that here. We can see how many clients, 2 resolved. Additional reminders resolved by E-Moran for Valerie Welch. So it tells you what's been going on for the summary for that particular user that you're reviewing. And you can write it for beginning through end, or you can write it for all of your collectors, as I have done. Takes us to the letters routine. So this routine in the client letter menu allows printing of specific letters for one or more clients. The letters are defined directly in the letter dictionary. There are 2 groups for which letters can be printed, the individual client accounts and selected accounts, also known as accounts defined by selection dictionary. So starting with the individual letters, there's the option to print client letters routine. And this routine is used to print a specific letter for one or more clients. So we can choose the client letter. And there's a lookup to the, to the letter dictionary. I just know that we're using client. And then once I've selected the letter that I want to use, I can then define the clients that I want to print letters for. If there's any queued, it will print to a printer. The next option, sorry, I didn't go to select. So the next option is to print letters by selected accounts. The first step is to compile the letters. So this routine assists in compiling a group of clients for which they want to print specific letters for. So to compile that client, you can use the selection defined in the bar selection dictionary that uses a client variable such as client name or client number. The example that I have set up, the client selection, I have here. I'm going to put in client. We already have it defined in the system. And once I've defined that, I can define how I want to sort my selection by my letters by name or zip. Do by name. And we'll hit OK. So now we have a selection file number of 20942. So once letters have been compiled by selected accounts, the next step is to use the print or restart routine. This routine is used to print a specific letter previously assigned to a group of clients via the compiled client letters routine, or this routine can also be used to restart the printing of letters. For example, suppose letters stop printing because there was a paper jam on the printer. You can use this routine to restart printing, beginning with the letter for a specific client. The letters are sorted by client name or postal code, depending on the sort criteria that was selected. So we have a lookup to our selection that we created. And then we can then print our letters from there. And this is going to go to an actual printer, so I won't actually print it at this time. Okay, there's a few more routines I want to show you before we end for today. First one is the assign billing group to clients. This routine is used to assign client billing rules to multiple clients. So when assigning billing groups to clients routine prompts you with the bill group for which you want the client billing group and allows the user to select a range of clients in the from and through client prompt. So this routine is useful when an organization adds a new client billing group to the system, and several client billing groups can be replaced by the new client billing group without having to go into each individual client to make that change. So you can enter the client billing group that was created, and then define the clients that should be updated. Few things in purging. And here, I know I won't have any examples that we can really look at because we don't have anything in the system that's old enough, but basically, client purge routines allows users to purge patient accounts associated to the client. The print client patient eligible purge routine allows the ability to print a list of all patient accounts for specified clients that are eligible for purging. Eligibility is based on purge criteria, which is described later in the purge client patient accounts routine. This list allows you to preview the accounts before purging. After printing this list, one can then purge accounts via the purge client patient accounts routine on the standard bar client menu. So I'm just going to leave. We'll see the last date clients patients were purged was 8/2/17. The last bill date used was 6/3/17. We'll use beginning through end for our client number and accounts billed on or before, I think it has to be 45 days. If I try to enter T, I'm going to get yelled at, and it'll tell me that it needs to be at least 15 days in the past. So to be safe, we'll do T45. See if we have anything. And just as I suspected, we don't have any records found. If there were accounts found, the purge client patient accounts routine could then be used. And this runs in the background and purges all client patient accounts which have been completely billed on or before the date defined and completely tallied by the month-end compilation. As seen on the screen, the last date the client's patient was purged, the latest bill date used, a purge, the last period and completed on will default in and it cannot be manually edited using this routine. This routine enables purging of all patient accounts between the selected clients defined in the from and through client number prompt. The accounts billed on or before prompt is present to list all of the specified client patient accounts that were billed on or before a specified date. And at this prompt, enter the date, and please keep in mind that the date must be at least 15 days ago, or else you'll get that error message that you saw me get previously, meaning that the bill has been cut, and it needs to be from 15 days ago, meaning that the bill is cut, and it closed general ledger accounting period with a balance of 0. Please note that the system automatically compiles period end data when an accounting period is closed. The date in which the last period was closed appears on the last period end completed on field. In the summarize and purge client charge detail routine is used to summarize all of the charges on client bills prior to purging. Typically, this routine would be used if there were direct charges posted to the client rather than to the patient's account. This routine gives the ability to summarize such charges for specified clients billed at least 45 days ago and purge the unnecessary detail. When a client is billed, the system starts counting how many days old the bill is. The system uses a single transaction to summarize all charges on client bills, and the summary may be viewed on the client's record via the account inquiry routine on the standard bar client menu. The last date charges were summarized, and the latest on or before date for summarizing charges fields will default in with information from the previous time this routine was run, and the client or clients can be selected for this routine by the from and through client number prompt. The charges billed on or before summarizes the client charges and purge the details for the specified clients billed on or before a specific date entered. Similar to the previous routine, that date entered at this prompt must be at least 45 days ago. So sorry I'm unable to do this because we don't have any examples at this time. But in summary for today, now I'm done. So in summary for today, I've covered an overview of the parameters and dictionaries utilized for clients, demonstrated how clients are set up and how to post charges, as well as process client bills. Lastly, we reviewed all of the associated routines and reports. And at this time, I'd like to open up the lines to see if there's any questions on anything that I have covered today. Well, it looks like there's no questions. I'm going to hang out a little bit more. I see some people are dropping off. You all have been a great sport. Thanks for the great questions, and I hope you enjoyed day 2 and come back tomorrow for day 3.
Yep, tomorrow, day 3, will be all things claims, claim routines, processes, and also the denial management desktop. So we have some new presenters that will be kicking off the day at 11 again, 11 Eastern Standard Time, and the day will go to right around this time again tomorrow. So thank you for joining. Hope you have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.